Good morning and welcome to another episode of Drew's Book Reviews. Today we are going to be talking about Book 2 in the Alliance Trilogy by Lawrence P. White, Conception. So first off, again, thank you so much for sending me your book, Mr. Lawrence P. White. I really appreciate it. So far I am really enjoying this series, and today we're going to be talking about Book 2, Conception. If you haven't read the first book, definitely go do that. I will put the link to my review on the first book in the description below. And just to advance warning, this review may contain some spoilers on Ship's Log. I'll try not to put too many spoilers for Conception. But hey, here you go. Book 2 of the Alliance, Conception, coming right up. Okay, are you ready for Conception? Book 2 of the Alliance by Lawrence P. White. So again, thank you so much, Lawrence, for sending me a copy of your book. I super appreciate it. Really am enjoying this whole book series, this whole idea of Earth getting mixed up in a battle or war between two different civilizations out in that galaxy. So we have Lawrence here has written a really interesting story. I am enjoying it. Definitely recommend it. Go check out my Ship's Log review. I will try to remember to put the link in the description below for that, but you can also find it on my science fiction playlist, Ship's Log being the first book in this series. So, the Alliance picks up where we left off with Ship's Log. So Greg has found himself basically rescued and now living on the alien world, the Ananti homeworld. He's been in this hospital recovering from his battle, and he's basically become the Truman Show of the Ananti homeworld. Everybody's watching, paying attention, analyzing everything he does. He's basically lab rat. And naturally, this is going to make him uncomfortable. I don't think anybody would really want to be in that kind of situation as far as being a lab rat and everything you're doing and saying constantly being analyzed. And it's just the position that Greg finds himself in, but at the same time, he's basically being worshipped as a hero, the savior of the Ananti. And so while he's recovering and being worshipped and basically being studied like a lab rat in the Truman Show of the Ananti world, he's also finding himself becoming an advisor to an entire civilization who is at a complete loss for what to do about their enemy, the Harbok. The Ananti being a very, very peaceful civilization. They have no desire to fight, no military of any kind, and they just don't know how to deal with this alien species that has proven themselves to be aggressive, like the Harbok. If you could actually almost imagine the Klingons versus the Vulcans and Earth getting caught in the middle in the 21st century at this time of our species or civilization's development, which actually, I've got to be honest, that's kind of what I was thinking as I was reading this. It's Klingons versus Vulcans. But, I mean, in the end, definitely the two species, the Ananti and the Klingons, are they are very different. The similarities, or what made me think of that, are really very vague things. The Klingons being their militaristic species with their cloaking devices, and the Ananti being a peaceful civilization that just wants to explore the galaxy and are long-lived. So the 200 plus years essentially. So that's kind of why it made me think of the Vulcans, who are this peaceful spacefaring civilization that's long-lived in the Trek universe. So that's why it kind of made me think of the Vulcans. But hey, maybe that's where it was inspired from. Who knows? And if it was, that's fine. I don't see that as a drawback at all. In fact, pretty much all science fiction fantasy books, they're all inspired from what was done before. And that's just how this art works, essentially. So it's not a bad thing. It's just, while I'm reading it, and going through it, it kind of made me think of Klingons versus Vulcans. As Greg here has slowly become essentially an advisor to the An-Anti, he's got to teach them how to do what they cannot do, which is to become this military force, to be able to defend themselves, to think outside the box, and try to imagine what is going on from the Harbock's perspective. And Greg is having a difficult time doing this, as his ideas that he puts forth become very offensive to the An-Anti, who are trying to do everything that they can to survive without having to go to war with anybody. And so they're in this kind of unique position in which this is happening. And of course, they're learning more about each other and about each other's civilizations, what's happening there. And eventually it's discovered the real reason why the Harbock are doing what they're doing, why they're being aggressive in the way in which they are. And ultimately it falls on Greg to devise a plan to save the An-Anti civilization from the Harbock threat. So you could imagine this ignorant 20th century Earthman trying to advise a society that's as technologically advanced as the An-Anti how to fight a war when they are a peaceful society that can't bring themselves to fight in a war. And how is he going to save these people? So it really puts Greg in this very interesting perspective, one that I can imagine must be very difficult and hard for him to figure out and figure out a solution to this problem. But of course he does figure it out, and as they analyze the data, they discover some interesting things about the Harbock and why they're doing what they're doing, and eventually they realize that they need to change how they deal with the Harbock dramatically. So Greg, of course, becomes this de facto leader in this. Essentially, he's the one all of these An-Anti are looking to try to resolve the situation, and they're looking to him for advice on what they can do to make this work. So he's definitely got himself a position of great influence and power now, and how he chooses to go about that. And it's a situation that he never asked for. He doesn't want to be in this position, but he is reluctantly accepting the reality of the situation in which he's in. So it'll be interesting to see how that further develops in the next book, in book 3 of the Alliance, Genesis, which you can definitely stay tuned to my channel, because you know I'm going to be reading that and following up on review on Genesis as well. So it's just a really interesting situation that Greg finds himself in. Now, one of the things that's mentioned in this book is a setup where that seems to be a barrier for Greg, or something that he doesn't think he's going to be able to overcome in terms of the relationship between the An-Anti and Earth, or even for himself, and that's their longevity, their ability to live for 200 to 300 years. Greg sees this as an obstacle that cannot be overcome. So and I'm just not buying that, to be honest. I'm not sure what to think about that whole idea. I just don't think the little age of a species, how long they live, of an alien species, is really going to be a factor that's going to inhibit communication, is going to be a factor that's going to prevent building a relationship. I just can't see that happening, and I do not see that being a barrier to human-alien relationships, essentially, in terms of communication, cultural exchange, having any kind of alliance, as the series suggests, the Alliance. I just don't see the longevity of any one thing being the issue that is constantly in the way. And this is set up in this book as Greg being that way and feeling that way. But there are so many other issues, like even the perfectly peaceful versus the constant conflict we see on Earth between nations. I can see that being a bigger hurdle than the whole age thing. Now, overall, I think that in terms of the writing, like the whole idea of this peaceful civilization turning to humanity, who has consistently had wars going on all throughout its history, and a warlike species essentially for help, is an interesting term for sure. Not that the Anti had sought humanity out for that purpose, but humanity got involved, and now Greg has been the one that they've turned to, and just kind of getting over that barrier and that hesitation to fight is huge for the Anansi in order to survive. So overall, though, I have to say that I'm really enjoying the series. I'm liking the concepts and the ideas put forth. It's really kind of fun, especially when we're dealing with an alien species that is, after all, very human in every respect, both in terms of physical, biology, genetics. Now, that's not explained as to why they are that way, but it's definitely an interesting creative choice, given that typically in science fiction, when dealing with aliens, they go out of their way to make them so incredibly, vastly different than humanity. Whereas with this, it's more of, what if the aliens were very human in every respect? It's just their cultural dynamics and their way of thinking is different than humanity's. But otherwise, biologically and genetically, what if they were very human-like? So that is definitely something that's very interesting and an idea that is explored within this series, and again, really enjoying it. So definitely go buy this book, check it out. I'm liking it, especially if you're a science fiction fan, definitely well worth it. So those are just some of my thoughts today on the Alliance Book 2 of the Alliance series, Conception, and of course stay tuned because Genesis is the third one, and I will definitely be checking that out. I will be reading it. You could bet I'll be posting a review on it as soon as I'm done. So those are just some of my thoughts today on Conception. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks so much for watching. And, you know, as always, like, comment, subscribe, and until next time, we'll see you next time on the next episode of Drew's Book Reviews. And until then, keep on reading. Bye.